You've made it through your first year of homeschooling and now you need to do your reporting to your governing authority? Well, don't stress. Today I'm going to show you just how easy it can be. Stick around! Here from Aussies Do Down Under Homeschool Season, and today we are going to delve into the world of reporting to our authority for homeschooling. Now, everyone has a different authority for their homeschooling and everyone will have different requirements, but what I'm finding is there's probably going to be somewhat of a trend. So although not everyone will get everything out of this episode, a lot of people will get something out of this episode. So this is for everybody, although it will be more geared at Queensland because that's where I'm in. I just wanted to give a shout out to one of my subscribers, Carmel, who gave me the idea of doing this episode. If anyone else has a question or needs something answered or has an idea that they want to look into or delve into and they'd like me to cover it in a video, please don't be afraid to ask. If I can, I will. Anyway, let's get on with our episode today. Now, even if you don't have to report for many months down the track, it is great to know what you need to report for before it comes along. That way you're not leaving everything to the last minute. And I know for a fact that when it's your first reporting period, there's a lot of information that they want. It is quite overwhelming in some respects, and you really need to be ahead of the game before you get there. That way you're not stressing yourself out, and you can also start collecting things that you know they're going to want. So it's a great video to watch even if you haven't got a reporting requirement for a few months down the track. So in Queensland, homeschoolers are required to report on a yearly basis. This is usually done on the 10th month of the anniversary of when they registered. So it's different for everybody. Now what happens is they send you home a reporting pack, and hopefully you can see that. Now the reporting pack is going to include a couple of forms that you need to fill out, a template for you to pop your child's report on, and a template also to put your next year's report, next year's program into as well. It's going to give you a rundown of everything that's required from you for that reporting period, and it will also give you samples so that you can see what's satisfactory and what's sort of not satisfactory. Now there are 3 parts to this form. There is the reporting for registration for home education form. There's a report on your child, which includes the samples. And then there's the educational program that is the same as the educational program that you do when you first register. So you can literally take that from your computer, update it with what you're going to teach your child the next year coming, and send in that same form that you did before. Now, if you are worried at this point that you're not going to know what to do when it comes to your authority reporting time, what I suggest you do is actually ring your authority now. They are usually more than happy to help you and send you whatever their requirements are now so that you can start preparing. I know that when I called them, they were more than happy to send me whatever I needed so that I was ready for my reporting period, even though it's months down the track. It's good to know this now because you can start collecting things. You can start putting away things, taking photos. If you are aware of what you're going to be required to give, you can start organizing that now so that you're not putting everything together at the last minute and stressing yourself out, because it can be a little overwhelming, especially on your first time. Let's look at the registration form first. This is the easiest form out of all of them, and really it's just basically filling out your personal information. So reporting for registration for home education is this form. Hopefully you can see that. Now, basically what it's going to require you to do, fill out all the required areas that you need to and gather all your supporting documents by the due date. And like I said, all the due dates will be different. Use the templates. Actually, they strongly suggest you use their templates, and really, why wouldn't you? I mean, if they're giving you templates, they're making it quite easy. They're giving you the examples how to fill out those templates. You might as well use those templates unless you have a much simpler sort of system that you're using. I say use the templates, because if they see their own forms come back to them, they're going to know that you've pretty much done what they want, and they're not going to scrutinize you as closely as if you send in your own sort of form and then they really have to make sure you've answered all the questions they wanted you to. So I do suggest you use the templates, unless, like I said, you've got an easier way of doing it and you're happy with that way and you've done it before. Okay, so provide the proposed educational program for the year after. And then if there's any details that have changed, example, address, court orders, authorizations, registration details, additional persons teaching your child, any of those information that you gave in the first registration period have changed, they want you to give them an update about that information. They ask that you use block letters, but that's quite normal, isn't it, with these forms? And then you send the reporting pack and all your supporting documents back to the same address you sent your registration to usually. In my case, it's the Home Education Unit, Department of Education in Brisbane, Queensland. So obviously, check with your authority. You're going to need to send it somewhere else, most likely, unless you're in Queensland as well. So they are the instructions that come with your form. And the first form you're going to fill out is really just asking for your names, your address, and your details. Very small. It also has a checklist just in case, so that if you want to make sure that you've put everything in that you need, you could just tick off the checklist. That way you know that you've done everything you needed to do. You're going to sign the declaration again, like we did in our first registration, and you're going to send everything back with this form. Now, they really strongly suggest that you put this cover sheet on with your child's name. They've also got a little checklist on the front of that one as well. Okay, so the reporting pack itself has a table of contents. In the first set, you're going to have the reporting information and work samples. In the second set, you're going to have the reporting form and the templates. And it gives you a little list of what some of the things are that you're going to do, details on what to provide your child's report in your report, how to choose your samples, example ideas, references to legislation in relation to your home education requirements. It's just basically got a list of all the different things that they're giving you in the reporting pack. Okay, so then they're giving you preparing your child's report, and they're giving you points to help you prepare it. So some of the things they're mentioning are this form, the reporting pack in its entirety, is used in the ongoing decision making of your registration. So your requirement to give a high quality education and report on that every year, if that is your requirement to do that, is an ongoing obligation on you. So your registration is reliant on you filling out these forms and sending them back by the due date, or they are in their rights to look over your registration and decide whether they want to continue that registration. It doesn't automatically mean that that's it. If you don't put it in on time, you're not registered anymore and your child has to go back to school. It doesn't mean that. It means that you're giving them the opportunity to then look into the registration and maybe decide whether they want to continue it or not. You know, things happen in life. If you're moving, if your, child's sick, it could be anything. You might have a valid reason for why you're a little bit late for handing it in. So that's going to change for everyone. But I'm just noting that it is a requirement in Queensland, as it is, to hand in these reports every year. And if you don't, that can go against your registration. Some of the items that they're wanting you to include in your report: 2 English samples of work, 2 math samples of work, 2 of your own choice samples of work, a response to any recommendations, suggestions by the authority. So if you're second year in and the authority has suggested that you sort of add something or that you look at a certain area, then they've sent that to you in the last year's report. You want to address that in this year's. So answering, if they've given you a requirement or a suggestion, you want to say, well, look, I've taken that suggestion on board and I've done this, and this to cover what you were requiring of me, and here it is. So you need to answer any questions or answer any suggestions that they've given you. The program plan for your next year, and realistically this is just an update from the one you've done previously to actually get your application. And then any additional material, so photos, evidence of your child's learning process. Now they do sort of suggest that you don't send them in files for computers, because not all files are going to open up on their computer. So they really want, you know, hardcover sort of paperwork kind of thing, photos, sheets of paper. They don't want you to send them a floppy disk because the floppy disk might not work in their system. I don't know, does anyone still use floppy disks? I don't think so. But don't send them a USB either, because then most likely will send it back to you and say, please print it out and send it again. Okay, so they give you an idea of how to choose the work samples to show for the report. Now, what they're asking for is something that's comparative. So the work sample should focus on same learning goals. The first sample would show the initial learning. So you're putting a plan together, maybe you've gone over a particular subject, and then the second sample is going to show a more complex understanding of that first task. So it's the same area of learning, but say you've explained that area of learning to them, and then the second sample might be the finished product. So say if you're giving for English, you're showing them a piece of writing that's, say, a report. The report might start with a plan. It might start with your different investigations that you've done on that report subject matter. And then the final piece of work might be the project. So if you've done the project in a big project paper, take a photo of that. That's what they want to see. And then they're going to want to see your explanation of how you've gone about teaching that. But those two areas, that start, you know, the sort of the preparation of the project, the photos of that, and the photos of your end result are what they're going to want to see. Which is why it's good to know these things before your reporting period. Because I noticed even when I first started, I was just sort of taking photos of the main thing, you know, the end product, realizing then that, oh, I have to do the other stuff as well to sort of show the progress of the child. So now I'm taking photos of everything. And in saying the photo part, when you're taking photos, put them on, you know, on your computer in a file so that you know where to go to when they're all there, and you don't have to go fossicking through them when your reporting period is coming up. Because, you know, we're still teaching 10 months in, and we don't really want the added hassle of searching through a lot of photos just to find the ones that we want to use. Okay, so some of the other things, they're going to want comprehensive, sufficient work to demonstrate the level of achievement. So they're going to want to see that whatever you've set for your child to learn in your program, that they've actually got where you wanted them to go. They've reached that level of achievement. Now, if they didn't, that's okay. You need to note that in the report. Maybe it's a matter of, you know, they didn't get quite where I wanted them to get in a particular subject or in a particular area. But I'm now going to address that by doing this, 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 and this in the new year. So it's not that you have to reach all those benchmarks that you set yourself at the start. It's the fact that you're working towards them and you're showing them that you're working towards them. But if you don't make it, that's valid as well. And they just want to see that you're addressing why you didn't make it. Maybe you set the benchmark too high. But why didn't you make it, and how you're going to then progress the next year. So that's all that is. Dated. Ideally, they're going to want you to have a sufficient time between the two samples of work. So say if usually about 6 months is a good time. So if you've set a particular subject, maybe in that term they're learning, I don't know, the space. At the start, you're just learning about maybe the planets, the names, how far away they are from the sun. At the end, they may have a project on all the different planets, how big they are, the vegetation, if there's any. I'm just trying to think of things out of my head. What their climate is, how many moons they all have, you know, all these different things. So you're going from starting the subject to a full understanding of wherever you wanted to get to in that 6-month period. Okay, and then reviewed. Show evidence of you as the teacher and your instructions, your support, and your feedback. How have you told the child, you know, if you're doing a book report and they've started the book report and then you've gone through that book report and you've given suggestions on how to improve that book report, and then they have then followed those suggestions and improved it, they want to see your explanation of how you've done that. So that's where that fits in, reviewing. Now, quality samples of English. So they want to show for English the stages of thinking. They want to show, like I said, the planning, the draft, the note-taking. They want to see a final copy. It can be a word process. So if they're writing a story, they can start off having a plan that's handwritten, maybe pictured. Then it might go on to planning the set structure of the story. And then the final copy may be typed on a computer and illustrated. That's going to be the final copy. Now, you don't have to send in your copy of it. You don't have to send in, their particular project. You can send photos of it, or you can just photocopy it and send it that way. Some mathematical samples. So they're going to want to see that it's logically set out, so that you haven't just got them, scrap piece of paper and then you're throwing it away, or that they're not doing any sort of workings out at all. Now, if you're anything like me, I actually get my kids to do it on a whiteboard and then I wipe it out so that I'm not using a lot of paper. Start taking photos of those whiteboards when they've worked out. You don't have to take every single question in mathematics that they do, but if you are using a whiteboard, just take a couple of photos so that they can see how they work out their problems. And then you can show if you're doing a worksheet once a week, you can show a sample of that worksheet. That's easy. But to show that process of thinking and working out the math work, then you either show them the book on a grid paper a lot of people use for mathematics, or you take a photo of the whiteboard if they're using a whiteboard, if they're like me. Okay, so some of the samples of other learning areas, you can select anything. So science experiments, which are a great one, humanities such as history and geography, which are also fun, even samples from the arts. So if you're studying a particular artist, then you can show how they've learnt about that artist, and maybe part of the lesson was actually recreating one of that artist's famous pictures. So then you'd show a picture of that and an explanation underneath of what it was. Okay, so that's it. An idea of how to collect the samples. There's a few things they don't want. They don't want completed workbooks. So they don't want a whole set of documents, massive workbook. They don't want to see your child's whole math workbook. Not necessary. They just want to see 2 samples. Again, they don't want to see internet material on your reporting processes or copies of work that aren't marked. They don't want you to send in a piece of paper with some of their work that hasn't been graded or hasn't been critiqued or given information about to the child. They don't want to see plagiarized work, but that's kind of a bit normal, isn't it? Okay, so, and they don't want to see reporting from a person who isn't the parent or a registered teacher, because remember, that was part of your requirement for Queensland. You had to be the parent or a registered teacher in Queensland to teach the child. You can't just pull them out of school and get them to learn from all these different people that aren't you or aren't a registered teacher, because that comes down to that quality education that you're required to give your child. Okay, so they've got a little diagram. We all love a diagram. Basically, it's just saying, number 1, plan the year's program. Number 2, teach that program. Number 3, observe, identify, and analyze that program. Number 4, instruct on that program. And number 5, reassess that program and send in the new one. Let me show you the yearly program that they're going to want. Now, I did show you, and I'll put a link to that video on how to start homeschooling. I showed you this program that you had to write, and I gave a good explanation, so I won't give an over-winded explanation again. First, it's going to want to know a little bit about your child's needs. So what are some of your goals? What are your short-term goals for your child? What are the long-term goals for them? Is there some learning background that you can give, some details regarding their learning background? Any details you can give about your child's learning style? Some of the strategies that you're going to use for your child in teaching them? Maybe they have some obstacles that you need to use different strategies for. The physical environment again, where are you teaching your child? Does it have access to a computer? Does it have indoor and outdoor activities? Is there enough light? You don't have them stuffed in the closet somewhere learning. Oh, but sometimes you want to stuff them in the closet. Do they have the chance to go and check out the garden and have a look at the different plants? Or, You don't want them to be just inside. If they were at school, they would go to different areas of the school and learn different things. They may have a science lab, they may have a library. So you don't have to be stuck inside all the time. If you want to go down to the library, great. They want that. Put it in your report. And what sort of social opportunities do they have? How do they sort of mingle with friends? Do they have programs that they attend? Do they go to sporting activities? Are they members of any religious activities, or do you travel? Maybe you travel a lot. Maybe you go overseas every year to a different place. That's part of their learning experience, is it not? Some of the best learning happens when you're traveling. Okay, so then it's going to want you to do your program in more detail. So you have each individual subject. You have your math, science, arts, English, physical education, language, and technologies. And the 4 terms, because we do it in 4 terms here in Australia, and what you're going to teach in each term. So this is a bit of an overview. Then you're going to get into more detail on each particular subject. Now, I've shown you this before. It has 4 blocks, which it basically 4 terms. What you're going to teach them, what activities you're going to use to teach them that particular subject matter, what resources you're going to use to teach them that particular subject matter, and how you're going to monitor their progress. Again, how you're going to report on how they learnt it. Same thing, you're just doing it each term, the subject you're going to concentrate on, and how you're going to do it. So that's for English, math, science, that goes through all the different subjects, and that finalizes. That's probably the biggest form that you have to fill out, to be honest. They do give you a sample. So if you're having trouble thinking, oh, what do I write? Just look at the sample. You can pretty much get that sample, change a few things around to suit your circumstances, and write it in pretty much the same way. And it also gives you examples of what to do in the particular subject. So just as a quick overview, say you're teaching measurement and geometry in term 1. How are you going to teach that? You're going to establish the formulas for areas of rectangles, triangles, you're going to calculate volume, and you're going to investigate cubic meters. Learning, you're going to apply ratios to estimates of the volume of solids, you're going to draw 3-dimensional objects, and you're going to design and create a block castle. How you're going to do, what resources you're going to use. Australian curriculum websites, Minecraft, hey, it works for me, manipulatives, Lego, awesome, and online tools that you're going to use. And how are you going to monitor that? You're going to write up the annotations outlining your goals and your tasks, and send in photographs. Simple. Okay, so then the next thing that they're going to give you is examples of work. So this is really interesting because it gives you real examples of work that they think is satisfactory, and also comments on what you could maybe tweak to make it even better. So this is an English sample, and it has little diagrams basically of the child that has completed this. It's got a little draft. It's got your markings that you have marked on that draft. So the child's written out the draft on that subject matter. You've gone through, or the child's gone through and helped you, then correct all the things that they've made mistakes on, and then you've given the final copy showing the completed work. Now, this doesn't mean it won't have corrections on it. It still will have corrections or not. And then you'll have a little, like they used to do at school, you'll have a little note beside it saying, well done, you've done a great job, maybe concentrate on this or this. Or you only had 2 spelling mistakes, well done, you've done a really good work. You may even have a sticker on it. So some of the comments on this that they've put, the sample is legible, clearly labelled, it has a date on it, the sample is fully marked, so you've given feedback, And there's evidence that your child has self-edited. So they really want your child to learn how to edit their own work. There's a lot of resources out there to help you with this in different formats that they can use to help themselves edit their work. And there's planning for writing. There's story mapping. There's a draft. So they've included the story mapping. They've included the draft. And they've included the final copy. Does it have to be 3 pages long? No. It's a paragraph. Another sample. This is of a younger child. They've done a little picture as well. And some of the comments that they've said, the text length was not significantly greater than sample 1. There's no draft, so they didn't like the fact that there wasn't a draft in this one. And it wasn't marked. So the teacher, the mum or the dad, didn't mark it up. So they've just given a sample without the evidence showing the learning process. So that's a really good indication of what's a great sample and what's a not so good sample. I'll show you. There's a sample. So in this, they're showing the planning stage. They're showing a photo of what was actually created, and they're showing you what was written by the child. Now, one thing I noticed straight away, there's no comments from the teacher, the parent, so they're probably going to pull them up on that. But otherwise, I mean, depending on the year level of the child, that's quite a good sample. And they seem quite happy with it. The only thing they've said is there's not enough feedback, which is exactly what I just said. So things you've got to really look out for with your samples: show the progression, show the start, show the draft, show the plan, show the pictures of how they've planned to do something. Take a photo of the end result, especially if it's something you can, like a Lego structure or a diagram or something that they've made. Jelly, if you're making solids and liquids. Take a photo of what they've done, show the finished report, and make sure that finished report has some sort of feedback from you. Okay, so some of your legal obligations that you should be aware of. The child's parent must ensure the child receives a high quality education. Now, I've explained that before, so I won't explain that again. They must give to the executive, your authority, the report on the educational progress, so this reporting pack and its requirements inside, by the date that it's due. You must notify of any change of circumstances. The report must be given 2 months, but not more than 3, before the anniversary of your registration. It must be in the approved form, and it must be accompanied by supporting documents. So some of the things, if you don't do these, some of the things you need to be aware of. If you don't complete it and you don't hand in your authority's requirements, you may be deregistered. And you need to be aware of this. You may give them that opportunity to take away your registration. So your registration may become questionable or cancelled if you have contravened one of the conditions of registration, which is what I've just told you. It may be cancelled if the executive is not reasonably satisfied about the educational progress being made, if your child's not actually showing much progress and you're not doing anything to facilitate that. Or the child was registered because of a materially false or misleading representation. So if you've told a lie in your registration and they find out that lie, then they can cancel your registration if they do. Now, the annotation that they want you to fill out is also included in the pack, the template. Some of the questions they're going to want very quickly. What are the general impressions on the past year of home education? What are your impressions? Did you achieve the goals outlined in the program that you first gave? Did you get them done? And if not, why? What are some of the things you could do? Did you have too many goals? Did you finish them way earlier and had to create more goals? What changes did you make to your program and why? What were some of the highlights or lowlights? What did you find great? What did you find interesting? What did the children excel in? And what were some of the things you found more challenging? In what area did your child achieve the most success? If they've come leaps and bounds in one particular area, maybe they weren't reading at the start of the year and now they are, pop it in. That's what they want to know. And any other relevant information that you can think of, pop it in. And comments on the samples that you've provided, what approaches did you use to support your child in completing these samples? So in English, what did you use to help them with finalizing the particular sample that you've given? Not everything. They want to know about the samples you've actually given. So if you've given that example on a report on making a structure, how did you help them? How did you go through and help them learn how to do that? In mathematics, the same. In the other area that you've chosen, which can be anything, the same. What progress did you observe between the samples? So you know how you had to do that first sample, so you've got the plan and then you've got the finished product? What progress did you notice that your child made? If your child started the year and they were making a lot of punctuation errors and now in the end they're not making those same punctuation errors, pop that in. At what level are these samples targeted? So you can look at the different samples on the website, and I'll pop a link to that in the description below, and you can see if your child fits in that below average, average, or above average category for that particular area or subject matter. And you can see work samples of how much information they've put through and what they consider above satisfactory or average satisfactory, or just satisfactory. You know what I mean? So what level do you believe that your child's at with those particular samples? And then, again, any other relevant information you want to put in. If you've got something that's not covered but you want to tell them about it, pop it in there. They give you examples of what they want you to write. Couldn't make it easier. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just say any other relevant information that's down the bottom. I'm very glad I made the decision to home educate, as I can see long-term benefits from Katie and the wider family. I know it will be a long road ahead of us, though I am sure we will continue to make progress, and I am enthusiastic about where the journey will lead us. Just general comments. One other thing I'll read, let me look. I had initially intended to include an introduction to German based on my family background. However, Katie did not seem to enjoy this subject matter. Poor Katie. Perhaps because there is little relevance in daily life. I may return to this subject matter in the future. So they've put a comment on something that they wanted to do in their program. They haven't managed to do it because obviously Katie didn't really like it, but they've thought, you know what, let's go on and move on to something else. We may visit that again in the future. Great example. There's a comprehensive list of what they want you to do. They give you the samples. Again, this is going to change for every different area and all the different authorities out there. So I really suggest you look at your area, your authority, and see what their requirements are. But they will have a similar trend. They're going to want you to complete forms. They're going to want you to give them a report and potentially samples of your child's work. That's pretty much across the board, is very similar in most areas, even other countries, very similar. Okay, I know this has been a lot of information today to process, and you'll probably want to go over it a few times. If you know anyone who is about to report and they're having a crisis of emotion right now, thinking how are they going to do it, please share this video with them. It could potentially help them, especially if they're in Queensland, but not necessarily. If you have a different reporting system in your area and you have a link to that, or there's a lot of information online, please pop it in the comments below. You never know who you might help, who's in the same area as you, who has no idea where to start. I do suggest that you always start with your government website. Just pop in Gov, pop in your area. So I'm in Queensland, I put QLD, and pop in homeschool, and usually it's going to come up in the first couple of search results. Now, if you really liked this video, please hit that like button. All those likes really help the algorithm of YouTube suggest my video to other people. So I really appreciate everyone who is commenting and liking. And again, if you haven't subscribed yet and you feel like you want to subscribe, please hit that subscribe button. Again, it helps my videos get out there more to people who need my help, and that's what I'm here for. I really appreciate everyone. Thanks, Carmel, for suggesting this episode topic. I really appreciate that too. All right, guys, well, thank you very much. I hope this video has helped, and I will see you soon. See you guys.